Could I have Mark Gerrard now? Thank you. Historic Places, Canterbury.
Councillors, thank you very much for the opportunity. Whilst we're here, I'd just like to acknowledge the passing of Pam Wilson, a well-known heritage advocate who you may recall in your travels. I think his contribution to the preservation of Christchurch heritage is just something very, very special. Pam was for many years in the Riccarton Trust, and also in addition goes right back at the beginning of the Nurses Memorial Trust of the Advent to Save It, and it's rather sad that you won't be there to see the opening next year. We'd also like to acknowledge and thank the Council's Heritage team, professionalism and the staff, and we think they've done a really good job, and we're very appreciative if you pass on we're really appreciative of their efforts. We'd also consider the Council's Heritage Strategy, the policy and charter, to be an excellent initiative, and we look forward to its ongoing development. In other words, well done. We think it's a great initiative, and we're really, really in favour of it. Now, just getting to the serious stuff, Historic Places Canterbury would also like to inform the councillors we fully endorse Dr. Ian Lockhead's notice of submission of the proposed Christchurch long-term plan on the deferral of the restoration of the Canterbury Provincial Heritage buildings. We understand the council is operating under financial constraints. However, these buildings are internationally recognised heritage treasures, and we request that the council explore all options to expedite the repair and restoration of these very important buildings. We are of course aware, and we would fully support if the council was in discussions with the government in some sort of partnership to ensure that this building, and that it be done in stages. We think it can be done in stages. We must make comments since the online form actually asked the question, are we in favour of the continuance of the landmark grant, so we have to respond to this one. Yes, we are. We'd also expect, if it is to be continued, we think it's a very, very good initiative of the Central City. You'll be aware of a number of buildings that are now being repaired, and work is progressing rapidly. With some flexibility that the council could divert, because some projects take some time if you're managing the outflow. That could be used for the council's own heritage buildings and manage it, but we're quite confident the council staff are capable of doing that. There's a note which we're a bit intrigued about, another thing that says that under Heritage Week held annually has become a deleted measure. We're not sure what that actually means. We consider that it should be held annually, and we think it's also a good idea for a report so that we can provide feedback and can be fine-tuned. There's some really, really good stuff, and sometimes stuff doesn't quite work, but we think it's important to get feedback on an annual basis. We understand it's a hassle for staff and they're really busy, but it's nice to have an input. A general thing, we'd really be happy if the council was actually more proactive in its marketing and messaging on the heritage buildings, because I mean, when you talk about your culture and your background and your history, that gives you that integrity to make that. I mean, I fully endorse the Mayor's wishes that Christchurch is an innovative city. I remind the councillors that when you're talking innovation, we are home of the Hamilton Jet. Rutherford was trained, tertiary training was here. The world-leading Christchurch Town Hall, and I think a lot of seismic work done by the University of Canterbury is done here. Well, we should tell the public, it should be part of our civic conversation when we talk about that. I think it's important. Now, referring to what's become known as the expressions of interest of the number of buildings that the council has put up for expressions of interest, we've got a viewpoint on that, which is we think we've got concerns about its process and its execution. We're of course referring to the number of buildings on the community board, as well as the big four: our City Otatahi, Edmonds Band Rotunda, Robert McDougall Gallery, and the Edmonds Pavilion and Band Rotunda, of the four that have put out into this process. This is a predetermined commercial process, and the documents are, and I'm not saying the council are about that, but I should point out that to make a submission, and we got a briefing from the council staff who assured us that community input would be sought on this process, but it was a commercial document and we went through it. And just as an example, to make the big four one of the tender, one of the buildings, we had to make an EIA submission, register on Real Me, register as a CC supplier. We haven't yet notified you what we're going to supply services for. Supply 4 copies of the tender document and a USB stick by 12 o'clock deadline. So this is really as a tender document and wasn't for consultation. I should add that my reading of the document, theoretically, I'm not supposed to be talking to you about that document because it says that I'm not supposed to talk to the council or the council staff, so I'm probably breaking that tender document by talking to you now. But I sort of have to because you're going to consider this a long-term plan, so I can't avoid not to. So that's, and also we like to draw attention to the following, that according to your council's own significance and engagement policy, a decision to transfer the ownership or control of a strategic asset cannot be made unless it is explicitly provided for in the council's long-term plan and the public is consulted through special consultative procedure. We can't find reference to that in the long-term plan. It says explicitly. So I'm not sure where we go from here. We should point out the report that's coming through you as a result of the expressions of interest. That is not a consultative document, that's a tender document. And I understand it's going to be done in public excluded, which I understand is commercial that way. And the public won't have a say, though you may come back with a special consultative process. So it's a little bit, I understand it's a new way of doing it. We're not sure that works. The other point we make is that we think the site of the Taki is a commercial building, and it probably should have been amongst the big four as opposed to the community board, because I'm not sure a community group could take on that building. It's a little bit big for them. As regards the other ones of the buildings, we've made submissions on them. Our view is that they should be, where possible, kept in public hands and for public access, like a hierarchy. Where best possible, a community group has a use for it and retain council ownership, and then down only at the last resort for a commercial one where it becomes excluded from the public. That is our preference on that. We understand this constraints and we have no objection if they're mothballed until they're available. I've got a submission which I did under the tendering process for the Bangor pump. I would suggest as an example you could hold back on your decisions until a decision is made on the red zone around that area and that be incorporated, as the Bangor is the only standing quote effectively of what was the Thriving Committee pre-quotes quote that is no longer there. So it was part of that plan, then you could understand the use for that building. There's probably no need for it to do it now until that master plan is out, which I'm hopeful is not far away. And of course, any work would have predictive covenants, etc. On the major buildings, Thomas Edmunds, Ban Rotunda and the Pavilion, which are currently being repaired, these were a grateful gift by Edmunds to the city, and we think they should be kept in public access and available to the public. The Rob McDougall Art Gallery, we think should be retained as a gallery. We draw attention to the ICOMOS Charter, which says where the use of a place is integral to its cultural heritage, that use should be retained. It's a gallery, we think it should be retained as a gallery and used as a gallery. We've also made notion about, we've done the part about the museum and funds the museum that do a full consultation and meaningful consultation as regards funding and what it proposes to do, so that be a prerequisite of the council's funding. The town hall, it's a magnificent achievement. I've had one tour through recently. It's a fantastic engineering achievement and it's not great, and we should be very, very proud of it. I understand there's been concerns in the media, but I don't think there's a cost over it. I think it's a great achievement, well done. Now, my concern moving more is the old municipal chambers. Specifically, we would argue that it should be retained as it was pre-quake, which is a community venue known as our city, Otahi, etc., as a public venue, and we think it should be retained. We may point out it's a central part of the legacy from the museum through to the cathedral, and retaining public ownership allows, it's one of the few heritage buildings in the central city where we'll have public access, and it's council's own building. If it's put to commercial and excluded from public access, we would lose something very valuable as part of that trip. And it's, as a community asset, I think it was worked very, very well as for a facility for communities. I should also point out, and we don't ever veer into the economics of it, that one person could run it after hours. Now, I understand you have a new facility in the square, but I don't think you'll be able to run it as cheaply on one person after hours. I'd be surprised, you may match it. Also, in view of this, I'm not sure what you're proposing for the community in the square. I'm speaking as a central city resident. So this decision is sort of done in isolation. I don't know what you're offering to bring the community into the CBD. That hasn't been part of the discussion. I'd be grateful. The other issue I should point out, we had a number of exhibitions like Women on the Council Chamber, Henry James Nicholas VC, etc. And so it provided input back into the community of exhibitions that you normally wouldn't get or wouldn't have. Finally, the thing that we were perturbed about was the fact that under the council long-term plan, page 15, it had something about negative public response associated to council ability to fund post-earthquake repairs, explore alternative ownership. We actually think you should actually look at our heritage buildings as the ones that led the regeneration. If we look at Isaac Theatre Royal, the Arts Centre, Heritage Christchurch, Canterbury and Christchurch clubs, New Regent Street, they actually led the regeneration back before the new shiny glass boxes came back. We should treat them for what they were leading back. We also think that we should look at each of these cases individually as opposed to just en masse. We understand there's financial constraints, but individual case studies on that one. We point out to the council's own surveys how important the buildings are. And in addition, and also the sense of how important they are, and I might point out that on one of the surveys, our city, Otautahi, was actually listed individually recognised by the members of the public. That hasn't been open for 7 years, but it's still in the consciousness. We've included, as a follow-up, and just for your interest, we've done this before, Donovan Ripkema is an American economist who specialises in heritage buildings and has made a number of heritage economic studies. One of interesting is that, based on a Norway study, 6 to 10% spent on heritage is actually spent on the site. The remaining 90% is spent off-site, so it's a multiplier. We also draw to your attention, which is a wonderful stat, at Mount Vernon. In Virginia, the heritage visitors stayed longer, visited twice as many places and spent twice as much money. So in other words, the heritage thing does spend up, it's worth spending. We also note that on heritage jobs and restoration, more money goes back to the local community than on new buildings. And as a job generator, it's more longer term and it's great for the economy if you need to regenerate it. And we also point out, if you check, visitors came to see in Virginia, heritage and preservation was way above anything else. The discount sellers and the shopping centres and the beaches, the theme parks, and probably the golf courses. That's on first visitors and on repeat visitors. So heritage is important and makes you money. Thank you very much for listening to the submission.
Thanks very much, Mark, and again, much appreciation for the passion that you always bring to the table. You know, what you say is right, but we've got some very challenging decisions yet to make. So, thanks very much for your input. Thank you. All right. So, if we could adjourn now until 5:45.